I would venture to say that all of you here know something about Jerusalem. Some of you perhaps have even been there. And I know there are one or two that are contemplating on going there. So those of you who are going there, you're in for treatment. But geographically, when you think of Jerusalem, you think of a city on what they call over there a mountain. It's really a hill when you compare it to the Rockies. And on that highest peak, which years ago was Zion, there stood the magnificent temple of God. Now, try to picture yourself standing up on Jerusalem, up on the highest point, and looking down here on the approach to Jerusalem. And you see there a Hebrew who is coming to the temple to worship. Now, as he gets close and sees that magnificent temple up there, he begins to hum a song. Now, don't hold your breath until I sing the song, because of two reasons. One, I can't carry a tune in a bucket, and the other is we don't know the melody to the song. But here he is now, he's humming this song. And incidentally, someday we will hear the melody. When some of those singers come back, we will hear that marvelous melody to the song that I'm going to explain to you. Now, here he is. The Hebrew now is up there where you are, and you're watching him now go to the temple. The first court he comes to is known as the court of the Gentiles, or unbelievers. Now, that's as far as an unbeliever could go, because if he went any further, it was punishable by death. So no unbeliever went any further than that, if he put any value on his life. Now, he takes just 15 steps. Try to keep track of that. And he goes through what is known as the court of the women. And logically, that's as far as the women could go in their worship there at the temple. Now he takes 13 steps, and he goes up. It's an ascent. And that's when the song is sung. And all the temple singers join in, and now we hear this marvelous melody and the words to that song. Well, let me take you to the Bible where the song is written. And if you will, turn to the 123rd Psalm. Now you see there, right at the superscription, what does it say? It says, Song of the Ascents, does it not? And if you look back on the other pages, you'll see 120, 121, 122. They're all songs, aren't they? So there's about 10 or 11 or so of these songs. Now this particular one here, let's read the lyrics together. To you I have raised my eyes, O you who are dwelling in the heavens. Look as the eyes of a servant toward the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maidservant are toward the hand of her mistress, so our eyes are toward Jehovah our God. Why? Until he shows his favor. Now there's two more verses, and I'll get back to those. Now, can you picture there where that servant had his eyes fixed? Well, in that song it says what? He had his eyes fixed on the hand of the master. Isn't that true? Think for a moment, brothers. In ancient times, kings had power. Today, there's a few kings roaming around, but don't have too much power. In those days, a king could be very decisive with regards to one's life. So whenever he came in the audience of his people, he usually had servants, didn't he? where do you think those servants had their eyes fixed? Well, if the king wanted something, usually he never talked to his subjects. He wasn't like our king, who's willing to associate and talk and teach. But they did not associate with their subjects. And so all he'd do if he wanted something, he'd gesture with his hand, wouldn't he? If he wanted chairs or he wanted somebody to come a little bit closer, he'd just gesture. And that servant would obey just like that. Now supposing that the king gestured and the slave was looking all over the place. The king had another gesture. Killed him. Funny to you, but not so funny to him. Right? But you can be sure that servant always had his eye on the king's hand. Well, since that could cost him his life, then it has some kind of a parallel with us, doesn't it? Can we be like the slave who had his eyes fixed on the king's hand? We, today, how can we keep our eyes on our king's hand? How can we do that? Well, here in these scriptures, it's interesting. Jehovah has been very gracious to allow us to have the Bible and have an organization to help us understand it. And here in the 40th of Isaiah, chapter 40, take a look there at the 10th verse, if you will. It says, "Look, the sovereign Lord Jehovah himself will come even as a strong one, and his arm will be ruling for him." Well, take a look at your arm, and you'll notice at the end of it you have a hand. Most people do, unless some accident occurred or deformity at birth. But we have a hand there, don't we? So here Jehovah comes, 1914, his arm comes with him, doesn't he? To rule. The arm is a symbol of strength, power. So Jesus Christ comes in full regal power. Well now, what would be the hand anyway? In the 24th chapter of Matthew, what's it speak of there? It speaks of a faithful and discreet slave, doesn't it? Now, can you see that one? Yes, you can see that one. Now, how can you see it? Well, on a hand, what do you usually have? You have fingers, don't you? And so that hand is visible in that that's the entire anointed class on the earth, which form the faithful and discreet slave class, as one composite body. And the fingers, they extend right into the congregation in the agency that Jesus Christ uses, which is your body of elders, or the servant body. Now can you keep your eye on the hand of the king? Yes. Now you can see it very, very clearly, can you not? Well, now, have you ever been in a, I'm sure you have, that's not the question. You've been in a restaurant, haven't you? And you take somebody there sometime, you say, well, I want to be kind to Mama or to a friend or to someone, and you say, well, we'll go out and eat. And so, because you've got a good heart, you try to take them where you can afford. What do you expect of the waiter? You expect him to watch you. Isn't that true? Now, how do you feel if you're trying to get his attention? Hey! He never looks at you. Do you feel like tipping him afterwards? You know what the word tip means? To ensure promptness. He's looking all over the place. Nothing prompt about him. So maybe when you're all through, you're exasperated, you decide, well, I'm not going to tip him. Not because you're stingy, but because he didn't serve you properly. Now that doesn't mean that we find excuses not to be kind to those who serve us, even in a restaurant, because they are worthy of some consideration for their service. Now, I'm not getting you to go in a restaurant, of course, but that's the point, isn't it? We want that waiter because of we having an investment in the restaurant by our patronage. So he's working for you, really. You're paying him. Well, then you expect him to watch you, look at you. Now, how does that fit with Jehovah God, anyway? Does he have an investment in mankind? Did he not give Jesus Christ as a price? Then is anyone excusable, really, from looking at that hand? Is not the king present? Don't we believe it? Is there not a faithful and discreet slave class? And is there not the agency that Jesus uses in the congregations? And don't we have the opportunity of looking at that hand through special letters, through the servant body, representatives of the governing body, such as we've had this week, those who represent the governing body, I should say? You see, we can keep our eye on that hand, can't we? Because it's important. Now, let's just kind of test it out. This month, what was indicated by the hand? Well, what was indicated is that we go from door to door and use the new book and preach the good news of the kingdom with an effort to try to not only place the book, but start Bible studies. Question. Where were your eyes fixed? Were they on the hand of the king? Were you watching that closely? Or could you have done that and you were looking elsewhere, exasperating the king? You see how it applies? Some of you perhaps could be in the full-time service. Maybe some of you could be auxiliary pioneers in the congregation. Where do you have your eyes fixed? You see? So, brothers, it's a serious matter, isn't it? The king is present. He has the power. He knows what to expect. He has an investment in mankind. Now do you see why the directives keep coming forth through God's organization so that we can keep the eye on the king's hand? And there's no question about it. The majority of God's people are doing that. And that's proven by the fact that no matter where you go in the world, you find that this earth is literally saturated with witnesses preaching the good news and literature all over the place. Why, you can even go sometimes to a laundromat to wash clothes and you'll find a watchtower there. Isn't that true? So you see, our brothers are working. One man says, I've taken a vacation to get away from everybody and everything. I'm in what I think is the most remote place, and the only one that comes to that last house on the last hill is Jehovah's Witnesses. See? Why? Because that witness has his eye on the hand of the king. That's why. He said that this good news must be preached to the inhabited earth. Now, seriously, and we are very serious about this matter, when you dearly love your brothers, you give them something to think about, something that they can go home and reason on. Now, you have a marvelous congregation here. It's a pleasure to be with you. It truly is. You have zeal for the service. You are friendly, encouraging. There are so many things you're to be commended for. You have a self-sacrificing spirit. When you look at the figures, then you look a little closer, and you begin to see, well, now there are some, perhaps, who knows, without judging, that could be watching the king's hand, and they're not doing it. That's possible. In this congregation, you have about 44 people that get out in Jehovah's service maybe an hour a week on the average, 4 hours a month. Then you have another little segment within that. They go a month, miss a month, go a month, miss a month. They never go out. Never say a thing all month long. Let's hope that's because you have not cultivated the importance of reporting your time. But supposing it's because you just neglected serving God. Remember the illustration of the waiter? Where were your eyes? What were you looking at? Were your eyes on something else? You see? Serious, isn't it? Because, brothers, that's God's will. That's why we talk about it. It is the King's will, the eternal King and His subsidiary King, Jesus Christ, who is in the kingdom that is now established, that we as His loyal subjects, as ambassadors and envoys, go to people and beg them to be reconciled to God before it's too late. And yet some may be dilly-dallying along. It's a serious matter. Very serious matter. So certainly we want to be sure that we understand this matter very well. For example, let's take a look here in the book of Revelation, and there you'll find what's going on in the heavens. And that's kind of exemplary for us here on the earth. For example, here in Revelation chapter 4 and verse 6, notice there where the paragraph begins. And in the midst of the throne and around the throne there are 4 living creatures that are full of eyes. So eyes are to see, are they not? So now we're taking a look metaphorically into the heavens. And what do we see? We see all these eyes, right? Now notice verse 8. And as for the 4 living creatures, each one of them respectively has 6 wings round about. Underneath they're full of eyes. Now let's see where they have their eyes fixed in heaven. They have no rest day and night, and they say, Holy, holy, holy is Jehovah God, the Almighty, who was and who is coming. So where does the heavenly host have its eyes fixed? Right on the Holy One. We can't even imagine that the angels in heaven would be looking someplace else. When Jehovah sets forth the command in the heavens, it's obeyed immediately. There's no question about it. Can you imagine an angel that doesn't know the procedure of the theocratic organization? Well, should we not learn the procedure of theocratic matters? Should we not know everything that is required in God's governmental arrangement? Are we not being trained presently, brothers, to live under the incoming world government? Should we not understand that as subjects? Otherwise we become misfits. We are not going to be miraculously transformed as subject. We're being trained now to live then. It's a very serious matter. So as we keep our eyes fixed, then we not only please the King, but we are qualified to be subjects of the kingdom. So here we have the disposition of a heavenly body, or the heavenly organization. When you think about it, as you move about in God's organization, you'll find people with different interests, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are some people, however, that are up to date on almost a variety of things. Some become almost specialists in certain areas. Sometimes you might be, I don't know, but you might be talking to a brother who enjoys baseball players. He'll tell you how old the player is, when he was, where he lived, how much he weighs, what kind of club he uses, how much it weighs, and he knows everything about it, doesn't he? How fast he can run. Another one perhaps might be a specialist in financial matters. Oh, he knows the price of gold up and down. He knows everything. Another one may be this, another one may be that. And then, too, in the theocratic organization, the majority, what do you hear? There are some that know everything that's going on through the kingdom ministry, the watchtower, and they're up to date on procedure. And they know what the organization book says, and they're always interested in different angles and different points of this and that. It's a matter of where they have their eyes, isn't that true? Now, there's nothing wrong in being up to date on other things, but should that be where our eyes are fixed? That's the point, isn't it? So this matter of keeping our eyes fixed means a matter of life or death to us. Let us not take this matter lightly, my brothers. But let us take it very seriously. Take it home. Talk about it. Think about it. Where are our eyes fixed, really? Now I'm going to come back to that song, but I want to bring something else to your attention. Now let's go here to the book of Nehemiah. Now Nehemiah, as you know, if you're like me, that's a hard one to find, isn't it? Because we don't use it. But I just happened to find it, so it's on page 561. Now, we're in the first chapter, and notice the very last sentence of that first chapter. It's speaking there of Nehemiah, and it says, "Now I myself happen to be cupbearer to the king." So keep that in mind. He was a cupbearer to the king. He served him refreshment, in other words, didn't he? Now we're ready for the first verse of the second chapter. "And it came about in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. And I, as usual, took up the wine, gave it to the king." Now here's my point. "But never had I happened to be gloomy before him." You see that? Well, that's an interesting text there. The king now, in those days, all day long he was manipulating armies, he was making decisions, he was concerned with the economic situation of his country and his subjects, and there was always somebody trying to overthrow him, shoot him, kill him, do something to him. Now when he retired to his chambers, he had a cupbearer. Now did he need some sad person in front of him after a day like that? No. But does that mean that that person didn't have any problems? Well, according to what Nehemiah says here, he says, "But never had I happened to be gloomy before him." So when he was serving the king, he had a happy countenance. He displayed that regardless of what his problems. Maybe he had arthritis, maybe he had this, maybe he had that, but the king never knew it. The king never knew that. Maybe he had family problems, or whatever it might be. He never let the king know. He was trained up. Well, now, really, we are cupbearers, are we not? We're serving the king. Do you find yourself to be gloomy in the service? Do you find the service to be something that is difficult? Sometimes there are people, I don't know if there's any here, I hope not, but if the hat fits, it's a good idea to put it on. But sometimes there are some people who it seems like they never have joy. They constantly find fault with different things, murmur about something or about someone, even though they have a marvelous hope and that the kingdom will bring relief. They are always finding fault with the shortcomings of their brothers. There are those who find fault with elders, with the service, with the territory. They get into the private lives of other people, the goals of other people, what they have, what they don't have, what they get, what they don't get. They find fault with everything and everybody. My, they're gloomy, aren't they? They're gloomy. I don't know why that is, do you? Maybe it's in the genes. I don't know. Maybe it's there. Usually if a person is unhappy all the time, maybe it is there. Who knows? Some people, after a certain age, they're born to martyrdom. Always feeling sorry for themselves. Well, brothers, we have a hope, do we not? The king is present. We are serving him. Can't we take our own problems to our own pillow and weep there and present it to our king and tell him what our problem is? So we hope that you continue happy in your service to the king. Did you notice I use the word happy? There's a difference in the word happy and joyful. Happy is a state of mind. That's what happiness is. No matter what your problem is. Did the doctor tell you you're a very sick person? Are you a person having a difficult time in other areas of life? Happiness is that it will not always be that way. Joy, well, that's a different word. Sister has a child, there's a burst of joy, isn't there? But she doesn't know how the child's going to turn out. It may turn into unhappiness later, right? Sorrow. We hope that never happens. But not so with happiness. That's why our brothers are happiness even though they face death, even though they're persecuted. No matter where they are in the world, they know it's not always going to be that way. So they're happy. They don't go around giggling, but they're happy because it's going to be that way. If something befalls us in our families, even though we sorrow, we have deep sorrow, yet not as those who are without hope. We're happy. Why? Because we know the outcome of it all. Isn't that true? So, my dear brothers, we have reason to be happy before our King and serve Him. So we don't want to be gloomy. Now think closely at the function of a cupbearer. I hope this is worth your consideration. After all, it says that there, doesn't it? He was a cupbearer. And it uses the word wine, too, doesn't it? Now, when you serve wine, at least you've seen it served. It's served in a goblet, isn't it? Now, maybe some of us, we drink it out of a peanut butter jar once. But usually it's served in a goblet with a long stem. There's a reason for that. Certain wines are good at certain temperatures, so you can enjoy the aroma, the bouquet of the wine, and the taste. And so it lingers after you've had it. At least that's what the connoisseurs say. Now, we have a temperature going through our bodies, don't we? We know on the inside it's close to 100 degrees. On the outside it's a certain temperature, isn't it? Now, if you were to grab the wine where by the calf of that glass, where it's big, the goblet, you change the temperature just like that. And you lose the real value of a good wine. And we can't imagine a king drinking, I don't know what they call these cheap wines. The king drank good stuff, didn't he? So that cupbearer was trained, wasn't he, how to serve the king that wine. Then when he filled the glass, he was careful. He never filled it up to the rim. Why? Because he was stingy? No, it wasn't his wine. It was the king's wine. He filled it about a third full. Now, with the right temperature, holding it the right way, he would present it to his king with a happy countenance. The king would look at him, feel relaxed. But who sipped it first? Cupbearer. Why? Well, he'd die first if it was poisoned. Now, what do you learn from that? Be a cupbearer, you had to be self-sacrificing. Isn't that true? And isn't that what we are, really? Now, I mentioned to you different things about keeping your eyes on the hand of the king. You thought, my, that's sacrificing. Well, that's it. We are self-sacrificing people because the reward is very great. And that reward is sure. So he would serve that to the king. After he sipped it, he would give it to the king, and then the king would relax in his wooden chair, whatever they sat in those days, and then he would sip the wine. He'd put it up to his nostrils, and he would take in that aroma, and then he would look at that happy face down there. Life is worth it, really. Hey? Now what's that got to do with you and I? Am I trying to get you to drink a glass of wine? Heaven forbid! That isn't the reason for this talk. But it does speak of wine, it does speak of the cupbearer, so we have a right to talk about it. Well, now today you came to the Watchtower study. Did you prepare? You see how it works? When meetings are called for at 7:30 or 1:30 in the afternoon. What time do you get here? Are you prepared to be here ahead of time? All those things as cupbearer we're trained to do. Do we greet our brothers? Do we comment at the meetings? Are we helpful to others? See, that's preparation. Yet some they never have that. Do you think a cupbearer would be pleasing to his king that way? No. No. So we learn a lot from that in the Scriptures, don't we? This matter of serving our God in the right way. So we want to prepare. It's just like a man who works hard all day long. He comes home. What would he think of a wife who consistently gave him half-cooked this, half-baked that, cold cuts of last week every day? You know what he'd do? He'd say, "Hey, dearie, I want to talk to you." Hey? Well, does not Jehovah call us into account too? Doesn't he bring us in and say, by biblical counsel, doesn't he talk to us? Isn't that what we're doing right now? Coming through the right channel, the Scriptures, through God's organization. It's good to know these things. So we want to be sure that we enjoy whatever Jehovah has for us. Take a meeting like this, sure, we have to end on time. But sometimes people think, I'll just stay for one and not the other. It's so long. Or they're always looking at their watch, see what time it is. Well, is it so difficult to be in the presence of Jehovah God, Christ Jesus, and eat at their table for a couple of hours? Is that so difficult? Is that so unpleasant, distasteful? Can we say to God, I want this, but I don't want that? And what about commenting at the meetings? If you come to a meeting and you never comment, never say a word, well, we begin to wonder whether you believe it or not. We don't know. We're not encouraged. You don't incite anyone to good works. You say, well, I'm timid. Well, we've got to break out of that shell. Jehovah is not an introvert. He's an extrovert. Anybody that put his name in one book 7,199 times is an extrovert. Isn't that true? He wants you to know it. So brothers, raise your hand. Get the lead out of it. It's difficult, I grant you that, but don't try to give the best comment. Just give one that you know, that you understand and you believe. That's all you have to do. Nobody's impressed whether you give the best one or not anyway. We're just listening to your faith. Make that public declaration of the Kingdom Hall. What would you think of a person that you invited to dinner, you worked all day, and they came there, you set out a 9-course meal, and they just stood there and looked at it all during the meal, never even reached for anything? What do you think of a person like that? You think, my, must have seen a wad of hair in something like that. Isn't that true? You begin to wonder. Well, isn't it true with God? Doesn't that mean the same thing? And what about us who are His people? So make it a family arrangement. Speak up. Take things seriously. Prepare properly like a cupbearer should. Well, let's get back to the song because the time is moving on here. Let's get back to that song and see how it ends here. It's a beautiful song, and it will help us to keep our minds on the King, on the King's hand, our eyes. Now notice verse 3. It says, show us favor, O Jehovah, show us favor. So we ask, why? Why does he ask that so emphatically? He says so here. For to an abundance we have been glutted with contempt. Abundantly our soul has been glutted with derision of those who are at ease, of the contempt on the part of the arrogant ones. Now back there, the pagans and the Samaritans, they made life miserable for the Jews in their worship of God, didn't they? So the Jews said, show us favor, Jehovah. We're glutted with contempt. Is it any different today? So many make it miserable for Jehovah's people. They always have. Governments, false religions have influenced people to be so miserable towards Jehovah's people. But the King will soon have his fill of that. You live in the generation where the king has been watching the whole thing, and you have been serving him with your eyes fixed on his hand, and he hasn't forgot that either. And so we look to him and we say, show us favor, Jehovah. And isn't it true, Jehovah's Witnesses, even as an organization, we have to fight for every inch of the way, don't we? We build a little beautiful building like this, we have to do everything in order to move in. Somebody else, they do what they want to, but not Jehovah's people. Always fighting every inch of the way. And it's going to be that way, right to the end. But the king is observing all of that, too. He's seeing that. And he hears the prayers of his people. Now, when this person on the earth serves a rich man, king, or whoever, some of those people, they recompense, they reward by putting in their last will and testimony something for the servant. You've heard that happen, haven't you? I know of one person, I know some, but one in particular, that works for a very, very famous movie star, that if I mention the name, you'd know right away. So popular. And this person said to our brother in the truth, if you did not work for me, I could never pursue this course. You see the appreciation there? He said, I could never pursue this career. So they reward, don't they? Either verbally or even materially. Well, now our king, is he any different? Will he not reward those who have kept their eyes fixed on his hand, who have sacrificed in this life? Did not Paul say that Jehovah is not unjust to forget the work that you have done? Jehovah God has said that. And you know what? He's going to give everybody, no matter whether they're wicked or whether they're good, some real estate. The only thing is some are going to get it underneath the earth, and the others are going to get it on top. But all of them are going to get a piece of the rock, as it were, the earth. But where do you want to be? You want to be on the top, don't you? So a man can give you something material, but Jehovah will give you everlasting life. So, my brothers of this South congregation, keep your eyes fixed individually on the hand of the King. Don't look what others do. Help others who don't do. But you keep your eye fixed. It's your life. Don't lose it. If you lose it, after a few years, people who survive will merely say, oh yes, he died. Pass the butter. She won't remember you anymore. If Jehovah forgets you, why should anybody else remember you? Isn't that true? So we hope that you keep your eye fixed on the King's hand. It's been a real pleasure to be with you this week. And to bring these things not only to your attention, but to my attention. They're taken out of the Bible. And so when we read the Bible and get the sense out of it, we can see how it applies to us. So you're doing well. Continue in that same course. Keep doing well. Years ago we had a watchtower. You know what it was titled? Keep on keeping on. That's the way to do it. You fought a good fight. Keep going. This generation will see the end of this old system. Anyway, I hope to be back here in another 6 months, but if the end comes, well, I don't know where we'll see each other then. So thank you very much for the kind remarks you've made this week. The blessing of getting to talk to some of you. Some of you had some personal things I was able to talk to you about. I appreciate that. It helps me to feel at least I'm approachable, that you can talk to people of God's organization. Who else do we have? And so you've been very generous in your remarks, very kindly in the things you said, and we appreciate the fine meals we've eaten with you, and we realize that those things are not easy to come by. So may Jehovah bless you for your kindness. Thank you very, very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the district convention very shortly. Thank you. like to, if you're able to, please rise. We'll sing song number 103.